All right, let's jump right into this explainer and tackle something I know we all struggle with, that completely overwhelming landscape of digital tools. Today, we're going to adopt one relentless filter for absolutely everything we design. So if you've ever felt, totally lost in a sea of new educational apps, wondering if any of them actually work, well, you are in exactly the right place.
But before we let ourselves get completely distracted by the latest flashy features or those pricey subscription models, we've got to start with one single powerful question. And that is, what is the learning job? I know it sounds super obvious, right? But honestly, it's the step that gets skipped the most when we're just eager to try out a shiny new toy. We have to ruthlessly define our pedagogical intent before we even glance at a piece of software. Which brings us to a really brilliant core concept for today: affordance. Now, a platform doesn't just magically have an affordance sitting there waiting to teach your students. It's your task design that actually activates it. Think about a standard voice recorder app. It only helps with language pronunciation if you design a task that actually forces students to listen back critically to their own voices. Otherwise, it's just a record button.
Okay, moving right along to Section 1, Mastering Multimodal Materials, Combining Modes with Purpose.
So when we combine text, images, and audio in our materials, we aren't doing it just to dazzle people. We're doing it to reduce cognitive load and really support meaning-making. Look at the stark contrast here. Starting with a gadget and asking, hey, what can this do? That usually just produces cluttered, chaotic visual noise. But starting with the learning job, that creates these clean, focused pathways for true understanding.
And, these familiar tools aren't just interchangeable digital worksheets. As you can see, each one has a highly specific affordance suited for a completely different learning job. Take Canva, for example. It's absolutely brilliant for bringing clarity and organizing information. Genially, on the other hand, allows for awesome self-directed learner exploration. Then you've got Nearpod, which makes the whole class's thinking visible in real time, while Padlet acts as a shared space for simultaneous collaborative brainstorming. They each have their own superpower.
The crucial takeaway here is that density is absolutely not the same thing as richness. I know it's so tempting to use every single bell and whistle available to us, but honestly, one perfectly chosen image paired with clean audio will always teach way more than a screen that's packed with competing animations and pop-ups. Those extras don't aid learning, they just exhaust the learner. Which brings us to Section 2, Immersive Tools and Presence, moving from viewing to inhabiting. Now, we are shifting gears to virtual and augmented reality environments, where learners actually step inside the context. And it's vital we debunk this huge myth right now. Immersion is not about having the most expensive VR hardware. No way. True immersion is entirely about that psychological feeling of being there. If a student is frustrated by clunky controls or confusing navigation, that sense of presence collapses instantly, and the learning opportunity completely disappears right along with it.
The deepest, most profound learning happens when we shift learners from simply consuming a pre-made virtual space to actively constructing it themselves. When they act as digital architects, like, say, building their own virtual museums or geometric parks in a platform like CoSpace's EDU, they are literally forced to externalize and articulate highly complex concepts just to make those digital worlds function properly. It's a total game changer.
But remember that psychological presence completely collapses if we exclude people. So we have to actively design for sensory, hardware, and multilingual access from day one. Not every student is going to have a headset. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. Planning for parallel engagement on a regular desktop and intentionally opening up space for multiple languages is absolutely essential for creating an inclusive design that genuinely works for everyone.
All right, Section 3, Directing Your AI Assistant. The director and assistant relationship.
Let's reframe generative AI for a second here. We need to stop looking at it as a threat and start treating it as an eager, but let's be honest, highly flawed substitute teacher. Yes, AI is incredibly fast at drafting scaffolds and exercises, but it is strictly a first draft generator. It will confidently make factual errors, meaning it relies completely on your direct supervision to actually be useful.
If you want usable drafts without spending hours rewriting them, you really need to use this 5-step prompting formula every single time. Dictating the role, the exact task, the audience, detailed pedagogical constraints, and the final format. That is exactly how you tame the AI. This specific structure puts you firmly in the driver's seat and will save you a massive amount of time.
And when you actually put this formula into practice, something really beautiful happens. It literally forces you to make your pedagogical decisions totally explicit before the AI even types a single word. You aren't just casually asking for a dialogue. You are purposefully engineering a targeted learning resource designed specifically for your unique students and their current level.
Moving on to Section 4, the Essential Teacher Review, where pedagogical judgment matters most.
Look, even with a flawless prompt, AI output is just raw material. It must never reach your students without a rigorous human review. Because remember, you are the director here. You have to actively filter every single draft through these 5 dimensions, checking for accuracy, appropriateness, comprehensibility, fairness, and data safety ensures that the final material actually serves your classroom rather than confusing it. Watch out for those fluent hallucinations.
So as you step back into your classroom this week, I want to leave you with this one final provocative challenge. Take a hard look at your digital tools. Do they genuinely make concepts more accessible, or are they just creating expensive visual noise? Always remember that the absolute greatest asset in your classroom will never be a piece of software. Your pedagogical judgment is the ultimate technology. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep designing with purpose, and I'll catch you next time.